that the only route out of addiction and mental health is through education, is through the understanding of systems and mechanisms, which is, subconscious mind, physical body, understanding where our thoughts, feelings and emotions come from, that we are independent of them. And once you understand that and you've got the dialogue and the information, then you can go in and you can correct it.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode on my channel. My name is Pan Michael, and today I have a very interesting podcast, my first podcast on the channel, and I've got with me here Chris Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Pan. It's great to be here.
Really good to see you, buddy.
Especially after we was working together a couple of years ago, so it's good to see you again. Good to be on the podcast.
Absolutely. So Chris, very interestingly, Chris is a specialist in addictions, and Chris sort of has a course, and he has methods and guides as to how you can sort of beat your addictions. So really phenomenal stuff. He has things like Chris Hill's 7-Day Beat Addiction Plan, and he is the author of a book called Get Your Life Back, which he wrote. Which year was it again, Chris?
So this was back in 2015. Long time ago.
Yeah, so Chris is a really incredible guy. Chris, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and sort of your background a bit and how you came into being a specialist of addictions.
Yeah, I mean, my story...
On specialist on beating addictions, I should say, not a specialist on addictions.
Well, no, I actually was a specialist in addictions for about 20 years,
Yeah.
But then I've gone the other way. So yeah, I had a full history of from a very young age, smoking from the age of 7. I was drinking alcohol by the age of 10, and that just led on to recreational drugs and stuff like that. But, at the time it seemed normal. It was okay. We were a bit the naughty kids and stuff like that. But, we got a lot out of it, but eventually after 20 years, you realise that, it's not working anymore. And, so I sought help. I went to, a doctor, I went to a therapist, I got hypnotised, I read books like all your books here. I really tried to study and understand what is addiction and how can I escape from it, even from smoking like a cigarette, and, that process actually led me on to understanding how the mind worked and how the body worked, and then it was just some crazy, day that I watched a film completely just out of the blue. But this film, and it was like a science fiction film, it lit it lit a light bulb in my mind. It gave me like a realization of what was really going on. Now, I'd been studying and learning and trial and error, going in, withdrawal and coming out of withdrawal and relapsing, people would understand that word, until finally I, just by randomly watching some science fiction film, it gave me the answer. And the answer was that I consciously, this is me and you consciously speaking together, I am independent for how my mind and body work. And no one had ever told me that, from birth, from my parents to my peers to my school to, the government. No one ever explained to me that I was independent of thought, feeling and emotion. I believed I was my thoughts, I was my feelings, I was my emotions, because that was always my driver. And, those 20 years in addiction, I thought I had a drink problem or a drug problem, and so I was always looking externally to fix my problems, but for 20 years I couldn't fix my problems, until, one day, and after all of this work and then watching this film, and it wasn't even when I watched the film, it was like the next day this light bulb went off, and it was the self-realization of I'm not my mind, I'm not my body. And what I mean by that is I know I'm living, I live in this mind and body. I was born into this mind and body, but there's me saying, like, I don't want to smoke, I don't want to drink, I don't want to take drugs. Yeah. So that's my conscious decision, and I can make conscious decisions, like I can pick this cup up, but there's an emotional force inside of me that didn't want me to pick that cup up. It didn't want me to stop taking drugs. And so when I tried to stop, this emotional feeling came on top of me, and it was anxiety or stress or fear or anger or void or hunger, like something was missing. But I was, determined. I was using massive willpower. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Sure. But as the hours or days or weeks or months went on, like you become weaker and weaker and weaker, because the system doesn't let go. And so in the end, after, I don't know, several days or even several weeks, you realise that this is not working. And actually, I felt better when I took the drug.
Yeah.
And that was the conclusion that I came to. And then when I took the drug, I got the relief, I got the higher. And then my mind literally just said to me, there you go, I don't know why you wasted all our time. Just keep taking the drug. But the problem with keep taking drugs is there's always consequences. You take a drug, you get the high. But immediately you get the high, then you get the consequence. And what the consequence mean is the change of behaviour, different attitudes, and even like the next day, like the withdrawal, the uncomfortableness. And also like when we take drugs or drink, like we will act and behave in ways that we would never normally, and then there's the embarrassment, the shame and the guilt. And so, but this was it was like Groundhog Day, it was just repeating itself. And, before I ever picked up a drug, my mind would be saying to me, it'll be different this time. We'll be okay this time. We'll only do 1 or 2 this time. But, it's that 1 or 2 that triggers that constant, because there's no limit to drinking drugs. When I started drinking alcohol, I'd drink 1 or 2, but once I drank one or 2, I had to then keep drinking for the rest of the night. I couldn't just stop.
Yes.
I remember what my wife at the time saying, Chris, just have 2 or 3 and then have a Coke or a water or something. And I'd say, yeah, I'm going to do that. But 2 or 3 drinks in, the last thing that you're thinking about is having have a Coca-Cola, yes. And I couldn't stop it.
So, Chris, what is addiction to you? And what are some of the sort of misconceptions that people might have, in your opinion, about addictions? And also, is addictions the right way to put it? Is this a label? Is it not nice to say people have addictions, or is this okay to kind of, yeah? So
it's a good question. I mean, I don't really know how to articulate in any other way. Like, we have good addictions and we have bad addictions. You might like cleaning your car on a Sunday afternoon, and you almost get dopamine when Sunday's coming because you're going to clean your car again. So you feel good about cleaning the car. But, if it rains on the Sunday and you can't go and clean the car, you're going to feel a bit upset that you can't clean the car. So ultimately, again, just cleaning your car on a Sunday afternoon can create your emotional state.
So, okay, so firstly, it's not a bad thing to say addictions.
No, I mean, everyone's in denial. Everyone is in denial of addiction. If you say to a drinker, a smoker, or, a recreational drug user, do you have an addiction? No, I don't have an addiction. It's a habit. It's something I do with my hands. Yeah. I just have a couple of drinks. I don't, I take drugs once a month. Like, so no one ever recognizes what addiction is. But, if we were more open about it and realize that we are all addicted to really anything that we do. If you've ever got pleasure from something, it released dopamine, and dopamine is a prehistoric mechanism to repeat that behavior. So it's a bit like mental health. Like, we're talking more about mental health than we've ever done before. But what we really should be talking about is addiction, and understanding that there are forces inside of us that once you start that dopamine process, then the mind takes over. It's a bit like driving. When you learn to drive, mirror signal maneuver, you were nervous, but now we get in the car, we probably don't even think about it. It means that the mind's taken over the role.
Yeah.
You're not sitting there blindfolded, believing that the mind's going to get you somewhere. Yeah. But a lot of the fear and the anxiety and the association is gone. So now the mind's doing the role, and that's really what addiction is. So we do define addiction, really. I always say to people, look, unless it's causing you or someone else around you harm, then don't worry about it. It's not a problem. But if you recognise that there's harm to yourself or others around you, then we need to address it. Instead of waiting, for, I don't know, hit rock bottom is some of the terminology people that use out there. Just recognise there's a problem. If you might be putting on a bit of weight and you're eating too much sugar, well, let's deal with that. Don't go on a diet. Let's just change the way that we look and consume food. So it's just more about being open.
If there's a scientific process behind certain things, is there science behind addictions? Does something happen in here? So tell me what it is to you, what addiction is to you.
How do you define addiction? Addiction is a want and need that goes on inside of you that encourages you to act and behave in a certain way. Now, as I said, that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. It's just recognizing whether or not it's causing you or someone else harm. We're here for a life experience. You know, if someone says don't climb that tree, I'm going to go and climb that tree. If someone says don't drink alcohol, I'm going to go and drink alcohol. You know, we're here to experiment and do things. You know,
I love being contrary.
yeah, of course. But, you know, but when you've got a society that's actually encouraging you to do these things, it's very hard not to get caught up in it. So it's more, you know, I mean, I would make this statement, you know, declaration that the only route out of addiction and mental health is through education, is through the understanding of systems and mechanisms, which is, you know, subconscious mind, physical body, you know, understanding where our thoughts, feelings and emotions come from, that we are independent of them. And once you understand that and you've got the dialogue and the information, then you can go in and you can correct it. Same as you can change a computer program and everything else. So, you know, we're dealing with, you know, systems and mechanisms of computer programs. It's just that you can't see it like a tablet, like a, you know, so you know, but the keyboard is you. It's your thinking, your speaking, your writing, because these are the three ways that we communicate with the mind. So thinking is a free spirit. You know, I'm a thinker, but I'm not the creator of thought, because my mind creates thought, you know, 50,000 thoughts a day, you know, so, but I'm a thinker, you know, I'm also a speaker, you know, my mind can't force me to say anything, you know, it can create words on the tip of my tongue, but, you know, if I choose not to open my mouth, then I won't say them. You know, and also writing is a very powerful way to talk to the mind, because to be able to write, you have to think. And then once you've written what you was thinking, then if you read with a voice, and these are the powerful ways that we can start that communication. And you're never going to get a two-way conversation with the mind. If I said, you know, morning mind, how you doing? It doesn't say, yeah, I'm all right, Chris, how you doing? You know, if that happens to you, then you need to get to hospital because there's a problem. Yes. But ultimately, if I say to my mind, you know, how are we doing today, mind, what have we got on? My mind will communicate with me. It will give me a memory, an experience, my diary. It will, you know, create an emotional state, which is my guide. So, you know, the more we learn about ourselves, our inner self, the more you'll understand our behavior and our decision making. And as I said, once you understand the mechanics of it, you know, ultimately what we're doing is we're creating alignment. We're bringing the mind, body and ourselves into alignment. Like, you know, we're creating friendships, really. You know, you're creating your mind as your best friend rather than the enemy, rather than, you know, blaming. You're saying, look, mind, you know, some of the decisions I made were wrong and I want to correct them, but I need to work with you for us to get over this period. You know, we call it the withdrawal period, but I promise you on the other side, we'll feel better about ourselves. And once that happens, let's work more together. Let me do a daily diary. Let me, you know, continuously talk to myself. You know, we all talk to ourselves. We just never knew that we were talking to our mind. Ultimately, we just want the best outcomes, and that is happiness. Yes. We get up every day. Why? You know, we're told you've got to go and make £1 million and do X, Y, and Z and wear certain clothes. But ultimately, you know, once you understand the system, you'll realize that true happiness comes from within. It's not something you buy or wear or do. It's with us all of the time. It's just that we sacrificed it for external things, you know. And so when we got massive dopamine for this and this, you know, the mind forgot about emotional, you know, natural emotional state, and now it's just applying to get these other things, you know.
And Chris, what is dopamine?
Yes, so dopamine is a chemical that's released in the brain that you know, is a prehistoric mechanism that causes us to repeat behavior. You know, before we had language and, you know, society and fire and you know, we were animal-like. So all animals are governed by their subconscious mind, the preset mechanism that says eat, drink and sleep. You know, keep warm and don't get eaten by a wild animal, and find a mate and, you know, you continue the species. You know, it's a very basic model. You know, so dopamine is that you know, prehistoric, you know, chemical.
So there is some innate sense in us, even though we are born with a blank slate. There is some innate things.
Mind, body, chemical release and everything else is independent of us. Okay. Like, you know, we need to understand this. Like
sorry, so the system inside of us, you're saying,
it's the system
is what's kind of innate.
Yeah, we are non-physical. You know, we're not a physical being. We're not emotion, feeling, thought. You know, we are energy, an observer. We are born into this mind and body to be able to experience life. You know, what happens at the end when the mind and body pass and it stops working, I don't know. But what, you know, I've came to understand, and I now prove it through our programs and releasing people from decades of addiction and mental health, is that the system exists, that we exist, we exist, you know, together inside this vessel, this vehicle. and our job is really to now understand how the system works, to work jointly with it, to get the best outcomes. And instead of the system, us allowing the system to manage us, we level things up and then we take control. So now the system works for us rather than us working for it,
How do you differentiate between a habit and an addiction?
Well, I mean,
is there a difference?
A habit is
pretty similar?
A habit is I pick up the cup with my right hand, and one day I change it and I start picking it up with another. That was just my habit. So that's changing of a habit. Or we drive on the left hand side of the road and we go abroad and we drive on the right hand side of the road. These are habits that we're able to cope with. But people make the mistake of believing that addiction is a habit. That's the first mistake, because they have no understanding of systems and mechanisms or the control that's going on inside of them. So everybody says everything is a habit, but it's not, it's an addiction. Right. And how we define addiction is there's a physical dependency, a want and need that goes on inside of you, that if you don't fulfill, you're left with a void, a hunger, an anxiety, a stress, or something missing. But when you act and behave in the way of the addiction, then you get fulfillment. If you smoke a cigarette, you get the drug. If you drink alcohol, again, you get fulfillment. The body feels relief. It sends messages to the mind. The dopamine is released and we feel better about ourselves. Right. And a bit like, you wake up in the morning, you've got a bit of anxiety because you need to check your messages and your social media. But once you've done that, you feel better about yourself. But if you woke up and said, I'm not looking at my phone, you'd spend the next 10 minutes or an hour worrying about what's on your phone. And then you'd be desperate to, what did I miss? So, these are all indicators of dependency, hunger, something missing, but we was never born into this world. We were born into this world complete. We were whole, but unfortunately society, starts extracting that from us, and then we're left with void, hunger, and dependency. And so the only way to relieve that is you have to pay and, for the products or the activities and stuff to get your peace, calm and happiness. But if we never got involved in any of these, we would have stayed on an emotional high, because natural state of being is an emotional high. We were complete when we were born, and we were given 27 different emotions to experience life. We had our aspirations, our imagination, and we were doing really well, until one day someone came along and said, look, I'm really sorry, son, I know you're having a good time, but we want you to drink this, smoke this, pop this, sniff this, and then we just got sucked into the system that, but to feel good again, now you've got to pay in that now. But the problem with the paying is now you're going to suffer the consequences, and and it's a cycle, and no one's really getting us out of the cycle, because ultimately they're making money from us and then extracting from us, and so we're just left ill and sick, and and people will just live and die and never realize that we were trapped in a mind and body that controlled us. So ultimately we've got to disconnect, we've got to understand it. As I said, everything is science-based. It's not faith-based. It's not belief-based. And we have the timelines to it.
You're saying, so are we speaking of the conscious and the subconscious when you're discussing about, I thought it was naturally me, but actually I realized there's a me, a conscious me or whatever, but there's also a more habitual version of me, or a more kind of a subconscious version of me, which when you're used to doing things a lot, or if we call addictions maybe the most extreme sense of either an obsession or a habit.
A habit, a behavior.
A behavior.
Or is it an addiction?
Yeah. So is that what you mean by I came to the realization that it's not really just me, that there's it's more scientific, let's say, than that? Is there a science?
Yeah, so 100%. Everything that I do is what we call science-based. And what I mean by that is that we prove the outcomes. And so, when I talk about, self-realization is self-awareness, awareness of self. What awareness of self means is awareness of my thoughts, feelings and emotions. Now, subconsciously, or subconscious mind, and it's hard to explain subconscious mind because we have a brain. Your brain is what, holds all your electrical signals, memories and experiences. So, this is the functionality of your body. But subconscious mind is more like a presence. It's something that is not affected by drinking drugs. You know, if I was to drink alcohol, you know, my mind and physical body get affected by the drink, you know, and I slur my words, I wobble, and then if I keep drinking enough, I'll become unconscious. Yeah. But we've all been blind drunk once, but got home, but we don't know how we got home, because what actually got you home was this presence, this thing that we call subconscious mind, which isn't affected by the brain. It's almost like a guide. You know, and again, like no one really ever explained it. You know, I've found it by fault, really. You know, a fault, you know, it's by accident rather than me, because I didn't understand it. Yeah. You know, no, everyone always told me that this is you. You are a wholesome person, and this is how you're experiencing life. So
there is of course an accountability behind our behaviors too, of course. But also once you start getting into those habits of those behaviors so much, there is an impulsive side to us, obviously, that kind of can take over or can be subliminally going, this is what you want, this is what you want.
I mean, we've all got to come to terms with our decision making and our behavior. But ultimately, if you don't understand the mechanics of the mind and physical body, if you don't understand the separation model, because when I talk about subconscious mind being a presence, that means it's like non-physical living inside your mind and body. So if I was to go and cross the road, you know, the subconscious mind will only really come out when there's danger or a decision or something needs to be made. Other than that, the subconscious mind just sits down. You know, it doesn't have a role. You know, the functionality of the brain is doing everything else, and you are the conscious self making decisions and experiencing life. But if I was to cross the road, then there's danger. And so subconscious mind comes straight out into the open. Of course, you can't see it, but you feel its presence, because immediately it goes, right, stop at the curb. Okay, watch the cars, wait for the traffic lights. Right, they're going to stop. Right, it's clear. Go. Now, there's no voice, but there's an emotional state. Yeah. But we are not the emotional state. And this is the mistake we've always made. I thought this is me being careful to cross the road, and it's me saying, right, okay, get across, talking to myself. But it's not. There's an independent part of us that is our guide. And just think about, like, when we're born, you know, we're born into this world, we don't have consciousness. You know, yes, we might be awake and cry, but I have no recollection of being born.
No. I guess some people say perhaps we have some innate-ness in us and pass through our genes or whatever have you, but to a big extent, we're probably born with what's, I think, more the terminology for it, I think, is a tabula rasa, like an empty slate. So yes,
a blank slate.
Yeah, an empty or blank.
Yeah. You know, so we are born into this world, but we have no consciousness. We don't understand decision making. You know, we have no language, and technically we're almost animal-like. So, but when we are born into this world, what kicks in or what triggers in is a subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is a preset mechanism to keep us alive. You know, the first thing it did when we popped out was it said, breathe. Come on, breathe. That's it. Yes. And then we started to breathe. And then when we started to breathe, it said, right, now we need warmth. So you know, cuddle up, you know, and then it went, well, we're hungry, so cry. And then we started to cry. And so those mechanisms were already there. We call it the preset mechanism. And as we grew up and we got older and we were learning how to be in the world, then, you know, subconscious mind or preset mechanism, which, you know, is designed for survival, you know, would release dopamine when something was good. It would create fear and anxiety if something was bad. Yeah. And that was our guide. And you know, even though we did get, you know, conditioned from our parents and we was watching our parents, this mechanism was still going on. Yes. You know, and it was helping us. And so, you know, but as we've grown up in what we call now a modern day society. So preset mechanism, subconscious mind, physical body was prehistoric. It hasn't been, you know, updated to 2025. Yeah. You know, it's still living in the beginning, and it's also still animal-like. Yeah. But of course, as we're growing up, we're learning language and behavior and how we should be in the world. And, you know, someone said that my name was Chris, and then, you know, I learned to write that my name was Chris. And then when someone asked me, what's your name? I said it was Chris, you know, but I was never Chris, if that makes sense. I was just this being. You know, and I was born into this world to come and take a life experience. But what we are is we're born into a modern day society where things are a lot different. And what we've got is a prehistoric mind, even though we've got intelligence. Intelligence and prehistoric mind are two different things. You know, when you look at the animal world or the animal kingdom, you know, animals are still being instructed by their prehistoric mind. Hunger, you know, thirst, find a mate, keep warm, you know, really just fundamental things. But, you know, like a fox or a badger or a deer, they haven't got the common sense not to run out in a road. They've not learned the behavior. They've not learned the danger. And me as a 4-year-old, I wouldn't have known otherwise. You know, it's only my parents and my school taught me the Green Cross Code. I don't know if you remember the Green Cross Code, but, you know, it taught us to look left and right and, you know, danger. And then eventually we understood danger. But if we hadn't been taught that, you know, we'd all be getting run over because we wouldn't understand the dangers and stuff like that. So, you know, intelligence is something that we as the human race have taught ourselves. Language, you know, fire, weapons, build houses. Like, we've done that because ultimately we as human beings, we disconnected from you know, the animal kingdom. And the way that we disconnected from it, we had the ability, or someone down that chain, historically, evolution terms, you know, be it caveman, woman, someone at some point disconnected from the system. And what that means is one day they said, no matter what the hunger, fear, you know, anxiety that they had, they refused to do what the mind and body was asking them. You know, and animals can't do that. Animals are bound to the system, you know, equilibrium. It was the way that the earth and the animal kingdom was created. But we've managed to ignore or disconnect from that internal mechanism and question it. And not only did we question it, we then made different decisions. And once we disconnected and made different decisions, then we gained the power. We gained power over the system, the preset mechanism. And once you understood that I haven't got to follow this anymore and I can actually do what I want, and then that's really how civilization was born. Because then, you know, the person that disconnected, you know, realized that if they've got the power, they can now instruct other people to do other things, because they still probably not being unplugged. So, you know, and this is, you know, if you looked at a modern day society, like, this is where you get government and corporation and, you know, industry that have the power over the people through fear or propaganda or addictions. You know, if you can suppress the people, then no one's asking any questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and this is really where addiction is. Like, it's, you know, we're bound by dopamine. You know, dopamine is a prehistoric mechanism to repeat behavior. So, you know, in a prehistoric world, it would be find food. If it was nutritious and you know, fed a hunger, the mind would release dopamine as an indication to, you know, go back to that point to get more food. If it was sour and disgusting, it would create fear and panic and say, you know, don't eat from there. You know, but what we've now got is that prehistoric mechanism, you know, running in a modern day society where we've got, you know, sex and pornography and coffee and sugar and tea and Netflix and social media. And, you know, that's before we get onto the alcohol and the nicotine and the recreational drugs and the pharmaceutical drugs. So we live in a completely addicted society where, you know, we're governed by emotional state that's driving our behavior to act and behave in ways in which really it's more about, you know, corporation and government, you know, wanting to extract energy from us, you know, by us buying and using their products. So it's almost like the human race has become more like a commodity. You know, I'm a commodity to government or industry or corporation that wants my energy. And what I mean by that, I've got to work to pay for things. So it's extracting my energy, you know, and if they can get me addicted to something, then they're, you know, guaranteed that I'm going to keep drinking the coffee or, you know, eating the sugary biscuits, or, you know, I'm going to, you know, drink a lot of alcohol, or I'm going to get addicted to pornography or gambling or, you know, social media. You know, everything is, as I said, is extracting until, and this is what I write and this is what I teach, until you disconnect. Because the moment you disconnect from, you know, and I'm talking about mind and physical body, once you disconnect from it, you take the power.
Yeah.
Just like this caveman woman, you know, in evolutionary terms, someone disconnected from the system. But the caveman woman that disconnected from the system, you know, in evolutionary terms, realized that he can't disconnect, or she can't disconnect everybody. Because if you disconnect everybody, they've all got the power. Correct. And if everybody's chief, who's going to go and get the food? Who's going to build the roads or the houses and the, So you know, and so it's almost like, you know, that law of attraction, the secret. They called it the secret because no one really wants you to know, because if you know, then there's another person at the table, and we can't have too many people at the table. You know, and that's, you know, where we've got to in society. Like, we've created a, you know, a suppressed society where, you know, we're not taught about our emotions and feelings. You know, I know we've got, you know, like meditation and other things. Of course, we touch on it. But what I came to understand was really where our problems exist, and they exist in our mind. 90% of all addictions, whether there's a physical dependency or not, is a psychological thing. It's what's going on in your head. And whatever's going on in your head is creating the perception of the world that you perceive. So it creates the emotional state, thoughts, feelings, and emotions, which you then act out on. This is where our behavior comes from.
Yeah.
And so because of those reasons, like, we need to understand this. Instead of trying to understand drink or drugs or society or how we've ended up like this, let's stop looking out here. We need to work in here, because if you can go in here and resolve the 90% of the problem, then the 10% just ceases to be.
Absolutely.
And you then gain the power of, you know, be it the corporation, the government, the fear, the propaganda and everything. You are able to then question the things that are going on around you. But if you don't have the skill or the understanding to be able to question, then you are a commodity and you're in compliance. And what that means is the mind and the body and the emotions, feelings, thoughts are just governing where you're going and who you're seeing and when you're going to eat and when you're going to drink and when you're going to sleep. But if you don't know it, you believe this is me making these decisions, but it's actually not. You know, your emotional state is pushing your emotional buttons, and it's very subtle. You wouldn't even know.
So what we're saying here is that all of this as well, in connection to sort of, if you're someone who is addicted to something, is a sense of you've got to take control.
Well, I mean, I'd say, look, you know,
or take control back, or I don't know, free yourself a bit from the norms or what you believe to be the norms.
I mean, look, it's very, very, again, unless you understand the systems and mechanics, it's very difficult to, you know, yes, you've got to take some sort of responsibility. The only people that really come to me or find their way to me are the people that are questioning the system. You know, I always say no one comes to me by accident. You know, someone was looking for me. Now, they may never even have heard of me, but they end up to me because, you know, universal model, universal law says, you know, the universe is giving you what you're asking for.
Yes.
You know, but again, if you don't understand that universal law, like law of attraction or law of vibration, then you know, the system itself is deciding for you. Yes. You know, and the problem that we've got with systems and mechanisms, preset mechanism, however you want to look at it, that it runs like a computer program.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't tell you it's really any different, because the reason that we know it's like a computer program, preset mechanism, because it, you know, it has high intelligence, high sophistication, but it lacks one thing. It's got no common sense. Because where's the common sense to keep drinking, to keep smoking, to lose your relationship, your job, you know, become homeless, like suffer with severe pain or mental health issues? You know,
it seems to. Would you define it as we're talking about the subconscious here? Yeah, so, or you wouldn't define it just as the subconscious?
So yeah, so when I say systems and mechanisms, I'm talking subconscious mind and physical body. There's only three parts. Okay. You know, people will try and dissect frontal lobe, you know, back brain, you know, right brain, left brain. Like, you know, it becomes very complex. It's just such a simple model. There is me, the conscious self. Now, when I say subconscious mind is a present, well, ultimately I'm a presence. Now, I'm not teaching religion here, but I was born into this body. Yes. I was born into this body as my vessel to be able to experience this life. Now, whatever your religious beliefs or are, like, we do sort of understand that when this mind and body pass, you know, our energy, our soul, our spirit, our something is going somewhere else. Whether you believe
apparently when you die, some say you immediately lose 23 grams. And there's actually a very famous film with Sean Penn called 23 grams. Right. And people believe that when you die, you actually lose 23 grams. And people believe that's kind of your soul leaving your body. I think I'm a big believer in that we are in a physical, we are born into a vessel. I believe that. And I believe, you know, there is the physical and there is the more metaphysical, or there's certainly a spirituality behind everything, or else really, what's it all really about? But I think if it's all just physical, then
Well, I mean, if it's all just physical, then we've got one go at it, and that's it, and we're never really going to understand. So throughout history, we're taught religion or energy, or even with modern day society now, like with modern day virtual reality, augmented reality. You go into an Apple shop, you put the goggles on, like you've got interactional films where you're in them, and it's as real as me and you sitting together. We've got technology now. I can just look at a screen, just click my fingers without any controllers, and I'm opening up emails and reading emails and stuff like that. So the evolutionary terms, we've come very, very far. But you fast forward that 500 years, like technology is probably going to get to a point where we've got organic VR, we got emotion, feeling, thought. I could be Ronaldo running around in a pitch, but all I've got is these goggles on, or some computer chip in my head. So
definitely the way it's looking like it's going.
That's what I'm saying. So we just don't know. Are we living in some sort of futuristic video game, and that we're plugged in, but we don't know that we're plugged in, similar to the Matrix? Is it just that we're this energy force, and we cannot create or destroy energy like the universe, so we're moving through form and into form, and potentially we're going to become something else? Is it soul, spirit? I'm going to get to the gates of heaven, and sorry for my sins, and I didn't have a rule book. I keep a very open mind. I suppose the reason I'm sitting here today is 10 years ago I lost my twin brother. I lost to a drug overdose.
Yeah, tell us a bit about that. And also, is this the moment that was a spark in your life to change, or did the spark come? I think actually you said already that a sci-fi film create more of the spark. But please tell me about this whole. I mean, it's a big part of it's one of the biggest experiences in your life, really, that made a lot of impact. Tell us a bit about your brother.
Yeah, I mean, look, I spent 20 years addicted to drink and drugs, and then I sought help, and eventually I found the solution to the problem. And it wasn't find the solution to the problem, save the world. I was just trying to get my life back.
But did that change come before or after your
brother? It was about 6-7 years before that what happened to my brother.
Did your brother keep?
Yeah, so no, my brother went down a sort of different recovery path. He went to AA, he went into rehab. So he went to a different way, whereas I worked it out in my head. I'd never written anything, I'd never wrote anything. I understood it. And by understanding it, then I taught myself a self-taught technique, which was I opened up a dialogue with my mind. Yeah. And I knew through other, recovery programs that there was a time scale to this. That if you done a certain thing for a certain amount of time, eventually the mind would switch itself off. And I'd found that in another recovery program, but when I relapsed or used again, when I went back to the program, it didn't work again. And it was really frustrating. I tried it again and again, but I never ever got that sense of freedom. And that's really what sent me on this journey of discovery. And a bit like the universal models, it presented to me eventually a film that triggered a light bulb moment, which then gave me the answer to the problem. And with that answer, I added to that, which was a communication with the mind, which was a self-taught technique, which, after about 10 days, it formed a reprogramming of the mind. So my mind went dormant of the habit, the behavior, the addiction.